Hello and welcome to the first lecture of Econ 2301, Principles of Macroeconomics. Today I'm going to be discussing what economics is, as well as some key principles of economics. So first off, what is economics? Well, it's not the study of money solely. In fact, most people will tell you it's just the study of money. It's all about finances. I have a master's degree in finance, and that is what finance is. If you want to major in that, a lot of my students major in financial planning. That usually is the study of money. However, economics is the study of choices and the cost associated with those choices. We divide economics in two main categories. There's macroeconomics, which is the study of choices by governments and nations, and microeconomics, which is the study of choices by individuals and firms, which is just a fancy way of saying businesses. So those of you who have had biology, you can kind of think of it this way. Macro is the big, macrobiology is all of life forms. It's the study of life in general. And microeconomics, similar to microbiology, microeconomics is a study of the small, the nucleus. Microbiology, you're going to study the single organism. So that's the best way for me to define it. Macro is really big, it affects a lot of people. Micro, really small, affects only a few individuals. So more specifically, and this will be on your exam, economics is better summed up as choices when there is scarcity. So what is scarcity? Well, the resources we use to produce goods and services are limited. It'd be really awesome if we could all have everything we wanted. For instance, we could all have an iPad, iPod, we could have all the food we want, all the gasoline we want, we could watch all the TV we wanted, but we can't. In fact, each one of those items that I mentioned are scarce. Those goods come from various resources, and depending on the limitations on those resources, they're either more expensive, more limited, or they're higher in supply and less limited. So the first lesson of economics is scarcity, according to Thomas Sowell. Sowell is a very funny, clever economist, and if you look down at the quote, the first lesson of economics is scarcity. There's never enough of anything to fully satisfy all those who want it. The first lesson of politics is to disregard the first lesson of economics. I find him very clever and very funny. So what are the factors of production? This will be on the exam as well. There are 5, and you need to know the 5 thoroughly. The first one is natural resources. Pretty simple. Resources provided by nature. These are things that you find in the ground that grow, trees, wood, oil, before it's been processed, before it becomes gasoline in our car, the crude oil, water. Here in West Texas, we have a very limited supply of water due to the drought. That causes a decrease in supply, an increase in demand, which we will look at later on, but essentially water is more expensive. Those of you who live in Lubbock, you have seen that firsthand as they tell you when you can water your lawn and when you can't, and beef prices are going to the roof. Beef is more scarce. So natural resources, one factor of production. Second is labor. Now this is the physical human effort that you put forth and the mental effort that you actually put forth to produce goods and services. Now this isn't your mental ability. This is just the physical, mental, actual action. So when you're actually working for money and producing, when you're getting a wage, this is your worker, whether the worker be a teacher, oil field worker, fast food worker, etc., their labor. Physical capital. This is pretty simple. It's anything you can touch. Equipment, machines, computers, things like that. Fourth, human capital. Now I want you to be able to distinguish between labor and human capital. Human capital is actually the knowledge and skills that you acquire through education or experience. So it's not the actual skills in place producing, it's what you acquire, and it separates you from the average worker. Now, I personally have a lot of human capital when it comes to economics and finance. Like I said, I have a master's degree in finance and economics. I feel like I understand it. My wife is a physician assistant. She understands medical terminology. She understands medicine. I really don't. In fact, I love WebMD. I don't have much human capital when it comes to that. She doesn't have a whole lot of human capital when it comes to financial planning or economic decisions, things like that. You are gaining human capital from taking this course. And the goal is to turn that human capital into labor. Now, a worker can gain human capital by doing something over and over and over again. They also are able to understand better ways of doing things by doing things over and over and over again. How many times have you seen a boss tell you to do something, but because they don't do it themselves on a daily basis, they may not understand the best way to do it because you have the human capital there. Fifth is entrepreneurship. This is big, very key to macroeconomics. The effort used to coordinate the factors of production, natural resources, physical capital, and human capital to produce and sell goods. This is the key element to make something. You know, we can have all four of these other factors, but without someone going out there and saying, I'm going to go out on a limb, start my own business, I'm going to start selling computers from my garage, turn it into Apple. Without the entrepreneurial spirit, we don't have productivity. Oftentimes, politicians will talk about small businesses and entrepreneurship. This is the key one they're talking about. How do we get people to innovate? Okay, positive versus normative analysis. Positive analysis answers the question, what is or what will be? Normative analysis answers the question, what ought to be? For those of you who have watched The Big Lebowski, you can see the little graphic in the corner. Essentially, think of it this way. Positive analysis just states the facts. Now, they don't have to be positive in an uplifting manner. They just have to be facts. For instance, 100% of people are going to die because that's just a fact. Right now, we know that the death rate is 100%. However, I was going to say a normative statement. I would say that everyone who is born in the United States should live to be at least 80 years old, and this is how we can do it. That's a normative statement. The first one was just a fact. The second one was a normative statement where I'm actually applying something and saying, well, maybe we can increase healthcare, things like that, education, health awareness, all sorts of things. In economics, we start off with positive analysis, which is just the facts. This is what's going to happen. You spend all your money, you're going to be out of money. Fact. Normative analysis, well, if we educate you on financial literacy, you're going to invest better and have more money in the long run. Here's just some examples. I encourage you to go through them. There will be a couple questions on the exam about whether a statement is a positive statement versus normative and differentiating between the two. Key terms often used, economic model. That's just a simple representation, usually employing a graph. We'll have a lot of those. The next thing is ceteris paribus. Learn this. Use it daily. It's very nerdy, but don't worry. No one's going to judge you. Ceteris paribus, ceteris paribus just means everything else is fixed. We're just changing one variable. So if I said we want to study the effects of sleep on your grades, and we want ceteris paribus you to sleep 4 hours a night versus 8 hours a night. That would mean that you have to eat the same way, you have to go to school like you have, do the same activities, but the only thing we are going to change is your sleep, and we want to see how that will affect your grade. Ceteris paribus means we keep all the other variables the same and we're only changing one. Marginal change. This is something else that will be constant in this class. That means a small change, 1 unit. From me going to the next thing, 1 unit. For instance, if I buy another candy bar, how much does it cost? Each additional candy bar. If I want to produce another candy bar and I own a candy bar factory, how much does it cost me for each product of labor we can look through? And that's something we'll get into more depth later on, but just think of it, 1 additional. I had a friend in college that used to always say, well, each additional beer makes me how much more intoxicated. And that's how he would look at marginal change. Now, I know that there are a lot of dual credit individuals in this class. I don't condone excessive drinking. In fact, only drink if you are of age, but that's one way that he was able to put it in his head. Okay, 1 additional, what is the effect on that? 1 additional, what is the effect? So marginal change is just 1 unit change, what happens? Rational people respond to incentives. This is also very key for economics. We believe that people will maximize their own utility no matter who they are. They're going to act in their own selfish interest. Utility is just the happiness you receive from making a choice, consuming. If I buy a t-shirt, it makes me happy. And we believe that you're going to maximize that amount of happiness. If the t-shirt is more expensive, I'm not going to buy as many. I'm maximizing my happiness. We're going to look at this more later on, but just pay attention that rational people will always respond to incentives. We pay you more, you're going to work longer, harder, depending on what it is. And you're going to always respond to your self-interest. So if, for instance, your family has a special get-together, if we pay you more but you're having a get-together, you're not going to work as hard because you want to be at home. So whatever your selfish interest is, your incentive, you're going to follow. Those are the key terms for Chapter 1. Quickly, we'll go through Chapter 2. Opportunity cost. Now, this is something you'll probably see real quickly. In fact, I think it's the first discussion. This is what you sacrifice to get something. It's the cost of what you give up. The opportunity cost of me doing this presentation was playing around on Twitter or Facebook or messing around on the internet. That was probably the next best thing that I would be doing. Even though I have a lot of work to do, that was probably it. The opportunity cost of me working would be staying at home. The opportunity cost of you studying might be hanging out with friends. It's what you sacrifice to get something else. Here's a good example of something you might see on the exam. This is pretty simple, straightforward. The opportunity cost of college. You're paying money for college, right? So let's say your tuition and books were $40,000, but that whole time what you're giving up is the wages you could be earning. Let's say you got a job that paid $20,000 a year for 4 years. That's $80,000. So your total economic cost or opportunity cost is actually $120,000. In fact, we could even put time, but it's very hard to value that time spent. But we would say that your opportunity cost is more than just the tuition you spent. And here's the thing. We talked about the incentive and the self-interest in the last chapter. Whenever there's something very lucrative and your opportunity cost becomes more and more expensive, you're going to leave the first choice. For instance, there are a lot of people that are starting college and realize it's hard work, and I could go work in the oil field and make a lot of money. I'm going to quit because the opportunity cost is so great. Why not quit? Make a little bit of money right now. However, in the long run, that may not be the best. I have a friend who teaches physical education, PE, in elementary. He makes $40,000 a year, summers off, and all he does every day at work is play dodgeball with little kids. Very simple, very easy. He used to work in the oil field. He worked 10 hours a day, hated it, didn't have summers off, made probably twice as much money, but he was miserable. So you have all kind of opportunity costs there. Hopefully you can kind of get a grasp of what opportunity cost is. Okay, the production possibilities curve. If you remember from chapter 1, I talked about the factors of production. Well, when we put these in, we get a production possibilities curve. It's just a simple graph that shows the combinations of products that economy can produce given the resources employed and how efficiently they are used. If you see any point on that graph, we are producing a certain amount of wheat versus a certain amount of steel. Now this is a really simple graph. There is no economy in the world that only produces 2 items, but this one gives us a simple visual example of what we could do. If you see that on the graph on the left hand side, the y-axis, you are producing at that point 0 wheat, and if you go all the way up to the top of the green line where it intersects on the curve, you will see that you're producing a lot of steel versus the wheat on the other side. At point D, you've got 70 tons of wheat versus 120 tons of steel. Well, as things become more expensive or more profitable, we're going to shift things around. For instance, there's not much water. We're going to produce less beef and more something that doesn't require water as much. I don't know, gasoline right now. Things like that. Gas is very profitable, and we found oil is not as scarce in Lubbock anymore. People have found huge oil reserves, and because there's a boom, they're going to put a lot of efforts toward that. Okay, marginal principle. Marginal benefit, the additional benefit. Remember we talked about margin, it's each additional. I gave the example of one candy bar and then another candy bar and another candy bar. The marginal benefit, the additional benefit from resulting of a single unit, a small increase in some activity. So that's a benefit you get. That's the happiness you get. So if I buy one more candy bar, that's the taste I get. It makes me happy, right? Each one. The marginal cost, well, that's how much it costs me. So if I buy one more candy bar, it's going to cost me $1. If the benefit exceeds marginal cost, if it makes me happier than it costs me, I'm going to do it every single time until the marginal benefit is less than the marginal cost or equals. Because at that point, I'm going to probably, it doesn't matter if I keep going or stop. If marginal benefit equals marginal cost, it's a wash. But as soon as marginal benefit is less than marginal cost, I definitely stop. Businesses are going to stop at the point where marginal benefit equals marginal cost, because at that point they've maximized their profit. Now you're probably going to hear me say this many times in this class. The goal of the business is to maximize profit. The goal of the consumer, the individual, is to maximize utility. Business, maximize profit. Consumer, maximize utility. Principle of voluntary exchange. A voluntary exchange between two people that makes both of them better off. A voluntary exchange between two people that makes them both better off. Now that was originally a typo in there that I had both of those up there, but then I started thinking about it, and I wanted to illustrate this point over and over and over again. The idea is that both people are better off. So if you exchange something for something else, you're both better off. If I pay you money and I get a t-shirt, I'm better off because I get a t-shirt, it makes me happy. you're better off because you have more money. If I volunteer, it even goes in the altruistic way. If I volunteer for my local soup kitchen, I'm giving up my time, right? Well, that soup kitchen's better off because they have someone working for them for free. I'm better off because it makes me happier. If it didn't make me happier than wasting time, I wouldn't do it, right? Remember our selfish interest? There are a couple examples here. I also recommend going through examples in your book. But the principle of voluntary exchange states that whenever you do something, you exchange something, both people are better off. Adam Smith, you need to know this guy. He's the father of modern economics. He's the person that first said we need to study economics. It's something that is key to our well-being. He stressed the importance of voluntary exchange as a human trait, and if you look at that quote, what he's saying there is that nobody else exchanges like we do. No dog out there is trying to make, I don't know what dogs make. My dog just makes, well, you could think of what he makes. He makes a lot of holes. How about that? He digs holes. My dog isn't digging holes so that a cat can give him a mouse. They're not trading. Humans are the only ones who exchange, and they're very deliberate with this. And the principle of voluntary exchange states that they both create wealth. They're both better off. Okay, real versus nominal. You also need to know this. This comes up many times throughout this course. Nominal value is the face value of money. Real value is the value in terms of what it can buy, or purchasing power. So if I have $1, then the nominal value is $1. It's just what it says it is. Now, if that dollar is not worth very much compared to other years or compared to yesterday, then the real value might be less than $1. Oftentimes we convert money, currency into dollars, give us a basis. Well, what we're doing is we're changing it into the real value. Here's a good example of how nominal value and real value can change. Let's say you lived in New Jersey during the time of the hurricane, the Sandy hurricane, and before the hurricane, gas prices were like $3 or $4, and you had $100 every month to spend on gasoline. After the storm, gas prices went up to $5, even $6, $7. In some places, it was $20 a gallon. Well, even though the nominal value, you still have $100, the real value is a lot less. You can't buy as many gallons of gasoline. The real value has went way down. That sums up chapters 1 and 2. I hope you learned something and enjoyed it.